Good evening, everybody. It's another exciting event with Kim. Hello, Kim. Are you there?
I am. Thanks, Aidan. Sorry, I was on mute for a moment.
All right. Good evening, Kim. Please, the floor is yours. We're very excited tonight.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. Great to see some regular faces on here and also some new ones. Tonight we are starting the first session of the true history of the world. Now, tonight's going to be a little bit different. I know a lot of you would have done some deep dives into the history, and a lot of that starts from the days of the Anunnaki. We're actually going pre-human into the creation of human. And why we're doing that is because it's really important to see the interaction of different civilizations on our world, and also how we came to be who we are and how actually we got to where we are today. All of that's going to tie into tonight's presentation. So I hope that you can follow along with me. Now, just to give you a little bit of background about myself in this area, I know some of you on the law sessions will know I always give that little bit of introduction. Well, this side's a little bit different. So a big hi to my mum and dad who are on here. We grew up my brother and I grew up with mum and dad, obviously, very, very blessed in that both of them carry an enormous amount of knowledge, of esoteric knowledge, of spiritual knowledge, of a lot of knowledge in many different areas, actually. When we were quite young, they had said to my brother and I, always when we were growing up, you need to find out things for yourself. Don't believe a word we say. Go and find out for yourself. And in fact, when we were young, they sent us off to Sunday school to see if that was a fit. Well, we went once, and that was enough for us. It didn't fit. It didn't make any sense to us. And I guess not long afterwards, our journey began. They used to teach seminars, which was based on the Huna Code. Now, the Huna Code is said to have been passed down from ancient Lemuria, and that dealt with the levels of consciousness and our makeup on a non-physical level, if you like. So my brother and I, one weekend, both of us under the age of 10, sat in on one of these seminars the whole weekend under the kitchen table. Well, children really weren't allowed in those seminars, but what could they do? It was at our house, wasn't it? So, and we were very quiet and we listened. We just listened the whole time. So our grounding in knowledge started for us at a very young age. Then obviously you go off and you live your life. I traveled the world quite extensively for many, many years. And probably about 12 to 15 years ago, really picked up on this side of things, really finding out who I am, reading a lot of material. Having my mum and dad just up the road for me was invaluable. And it's something that I would be forever grateful for, because I would read. And almost every weekend I would be taking a trip up to them, which is only 2 hours away, and talking through, integrating that knowledge. And that really hasn't stopped since then. So that's a little bit of history for you on this side of things before we get into it. Now, the other thing that I do want to say is that I'm not a teacher. I'm a student of the universe, as is everybody here. And this is an exchange of knowledge. The more that we can exchange knowledge with each other, the better it is for all of us. The more integration of knowledge, the more awareness that we have of who we are and what that actually looks like for us, and allowing that creativity to come through, the better it is for all of us. So I just really wanted to put that on the table first, that we are all learning. We never stop learning. Every moment of every day is a learning experience. So in saying all of that, this presentation tonight may come as a shock for some of you, or for some of you that listen to this afterwards. I know there is so much information that has come out, particularly over the last few years. Many years ago, you had to dig through bookshops and try and find these books that contained this kind of knowledge. And quite often it was very, very difficult. But there's a lot of good books out there, and particularly over the last 3 years, a lot more information, both in the form of books, in the form of social media, has been made available. So we've all been on this exponential learning growth, really. So if this does come as a surprise to you, this knowledge is you may not understand or comprehend what it all means as we go through it, but that's okay. Each of us grow differently at a different rate of rot. So as you go through, integrate this knowledge as best you can. Refer back to it if you need to. Do your own investigations. Find these things out for yourself. Find the books. There's many references in this presentation tonight that will allow you to go out and go through these books, go through this material so that you can continue on with your own journey. We all have to do that at some point. That's where that taking responsibility for ourselves comes into play. So just know, if this doesn't sit with you, that's okay. If you're not sure about something that I say, that's okay. It makes no difference to me. This is a learning process for everybody. Some of it will resonate with you, some of it won't. A lot of our ingrained program beliefs get in the way of truth, as we all know, as we have all found out, particularly over these last 3 years, 4 years now, whatever it is. So however that looks for you, then that's okay. So as a part of that process and a part of this learning process, what we all must practice is discernment. Yes, this information might be confronting for some of you. Yes, we know that we have been told so many lies. We know that this is going to challenge us. Some of this information has even challenged seasoned seekers, if you like. But again, do your own research, integrate your own knowledge, and use discernment. There's esoteric knowledge that's going to be interwoven right throughout this. And as I said before, discernment is the key. So some little tricks of the trade on discernment. When you first hear something, when you first read something, you get an immediate reaction in your gut, which lasts for about a millisecond. Now, if you're not conscious, you won't even know that it's happened. But that millisecond tells you whether this is truth or whether this is someone else's reality. It's tuning into that millisecond of a feeling in your gut to know whether something is right or something is wrong. Now, another big telltale when we're looking at discernment is we know that there's lots of information coming out, and a lot of it's put out by the same side. So you need to look for anything that has fear, that has a fear-based narrative, anything that is trying to distract you off the path, anything that's going to try and throw you in a different direction. A lot of people will come out and talk about a lot of things in their podcasts, in their interviews, etc., which contain truth, and to a point. Then you'll see a couple of little bits and pieces dropped in here and there, which will be a little bit of a red flag, maybe not just enough for you to realize in the first instance, but eventually it will be enough to take you off down another path so that you are not actually integrating truth. So just a little few tips on discernment there for you. So I think tonight we're going to start off by asking some questions. So what if we're not really who we think we are? What if we're a beautiful experiment by advanced civilizations? What if the stories in the Bible, as most of us know, are not taught or depicted in the way that they are meant to be? What if the control we see today was started over 400,000 years ago? What if there's been many different galactic civilizations, both benevolent and malevolent, on this planet to get us where we are today? What if our DNA is the most sought after prize in the universe? What if we integrate knowledge, we come into the full power of who we really are? What would that look like? where could that take us? What sort of a beautiful, amazing, almost incomprehensible world would we live in? So these are the things that we're going to start to have a look at in this very early history. So I'm going to start to share my screen now. Okay, so firstly, there's a very ancient book known as the Popol Vuh of the Mayan culture. And this tells the story of creation on Earth. It's quite a difficult read. And it talks about how the sky gods, as they are called, created different races of people before humans. Now, not sky gods in the sense of the Anunnaki that we might all be used to, but sky gods in the sense of galactic species that actually created, did what was called terraformed Earth and created different civilizations. So if we start to have a look at the first inhabitants on Earth, the Sasquatch Message to Humanity is a very good series of books, which gives the account of the creation of Earth and also the different civilizations that existed on Earth prior to humans being created. So in this book, they reference 5 different civilizations which existed on Earth prior to humans. The first one was the fish people, second the ant people, the lizard people, bird people, Sasquatch, and then finally humans. So very good in-depth look into these different civilizations is Dr. Michael Sala has done a webinar on exopolitics today called the Crypto-Terrestrials. If anybody wants to do that, it is a paid for webinar, but it's well worth it for a more in-depth look. Some of these things we are going to cover in today's session, but by all means, go and check him out. He does some amazing work if you haven't already. Okay, so prior to getting into this, the Earth, in its culmination of becoming the Earth, went through many, many different stages. The planet just doesn't appear as this beautiful blue oceaned rainforest land planet. It takes many, many years and goes through many, many cycles to actually get to where it is today. So a lot of these cycles will encompass these different civilizations and the reason for them actually coming onto Earth at different times. So Sasquatch Message to Humanity on page 54, they state in here that the star elders from a more ancient neighboring galaxy that we know as the Andromeda Galaxy found a auspicious or a reasonable environment to introduce their genetic memory. So with their DNA star seeds, they created the ones genetically referred to as the fish people or the mer people. Predominantly at that time on Earth was mostly water. It was a water planet. The land masses hadn't actually formed at that stage. So you really have to have civilizations that can adapt to the environment of the Earth at that time. They're an intelligent interspecies hybrids with spiritual consciousness to be born on this home planet. They have been here longer than any other intelligent beings native from Earth. Now, a lot of these mer people or fish people can actually be found in a lot of different texts, in ancient texts. And we'll start to go through those shortly. Sorry, I've just repeated that slide there. So if we start to have a look back at the evidence in history, we firstly come to the Ones, the Babylonian sea god, which was depicted in the 4th century BC and described as half human, half fish. As a creature that emerged from the depths of the ocean each day to impart knowledge on writing, arts, and sciences to the people, mostly in the Persian Gulf area. There's also accounts of Dagon, the mermaid god, a god who was worshipped by ancient Sumerians and Phoenicians across the middle of the Euphrates, and he was regarded as the father of the gods, quite often linked to the Anunnaki god, or what they call a god of Anki and Ea. Even in the Old Testament Bible, in the books of Judges, Samuel, and Kings, the merman's gods are referenced in those. You can look them up for yourself. and they will tell some of the story in those books in the Bible. We've got Poseidon, Neptune, again, also known as Enki and Ea. This is an ancient Greek religion. It's a god of the sea and god of the water. Poseidon means Lord of the earth. Now, as we start to move along this journey and we get into the Anunnaki history, you will see that Enki, the word Enki actually means keeper of the earth, or in charge of the earth, if you like. We also have the references here of Zeus, who was Enki's brother, otherwise known as Enlil, known as the sky god at that time. That's again later on in the Anunnaki history. There's more recent accounts that have been reported on mer people or fish people. Of note, in 1982, Russian military divers encountered aquatic humanoids without scuba equipment at Lake Baikal in Russia. These aquatic humanoids weren't wearing any scuba gear, and they actually ensured that these divers were moved on. In fact, the account goes, one of the divers actually reached out to touch one of these mer people. They pushed them so hard that they went to the surface too quickly, suffered the bends. Some of them died, some of them survived, but were severely injured. So that's an actual real-life account from the Russian military divers. In addition to this, we also have accounts from the American military secret space program that have also encountered mer people or underwater bases in various parts of the ocean, typically at this point in time around the Bermuda Triangle area. So as you can see, the mer people still very prevalent in today's society, still having accounts of interactions of the mer people or the fish people today. Now, that's only a couple out of many hundreds of reports that is actually in this slide presentation, but it really goes to show that those very ancient beings that were on Earth, or the first to inhabit Earth, are still alive and well, still participating in the growth of humanity. They are still sharing wisdom and technology and knowledge. So moving along from there, the second civilization on this planet were known as the ant people. So as the earth turned into a beautiful garden, as the land started to terraform, the water started to recede, the Star Elders knew this caretaking process was extremely long. So up until then, in the solid phase of the earth, they'd been introducing different species, now different alien species. Now that doesn't necessarily mean to say they're a humanoid form, but when we talk about different species, that could be in plant life, other animal life, other types of beings that inhabit our earth that we cannot see. At this point in time, they decided to introduce their own genetic memory to accelerate the consciousness progress of Earth. So Earth also owns its own consciousness. A planet is a sentient being just as we are. When we live on a planet, our energies interact with that particular planet and each help each other to actually develop our own consciousness as we go along our journey. So the most evolved earthly genetic material at that time came from the multi-legged species. It evolved over a long period of time to end up being the ant people on this planet Earth. And why the ant people? In that environment at that particular time, they were a highly adaptable and resilient species, resistant to the harshest conditions, and they offered a large variety of DNA. So since their level of consciousness was primary to the evolutionary scale that existed on Earth at that time, the Star Elders, and we will go on to explain the Star Elders a little bit later on, used the DNA of evolved ants that they had imported from their planets. They added their own DNA to the mix and created a spiritually conscious, intelligent hybrid species. Now, these ant species are depicted very much plays an important role in the Hopi and Indian story. The ant people of the Hopi legends tell the story of how the ant people were critical to their survival through the First World destruction by fire and the Second World destruction by the Ice Age. So they say that the members of the Hopi tribe were guided by an odd-shaped cloud during the day and a moving star at night that led them to the sky god named Sotukanang. Sorry, if I've pronounced that wrong, I probably have. So they took them to the ant people in Hopi, Anusinom, and then the ant people escorted them into subterranean caves where they were given sustenance, so they were fed, and they found refuge right throughout those periods of early destruction through Earth's history, both times. Now, information from Elena Danan in her book called The Cedars talks about a race called the Ashai race. These are one of the 24 cedars that we're going to cover a little bit later on in this presentation, and is likely the root race of the ant people as mentioned by the Star Elders. So the Ashane race was also mentioned numerous times in the book, The Only Planet of Choice, which is based on communications with the Nine. The Nine is a whole different set of, a whole group of sentient beings, of which that explanation, I think, will come a little later on in another series. So what they say in The Only Planet of Choice is that Ashan was the beginning of the great composers. So the ant people played a massive role in the Renaissance period. So the bringing greatness of art upon the planet Earth. Began in small portions in the time of Egypt and its working with gold and in its beauty of architectural environments. And Ashan is simply a civilization of great creativity, brought to the planet Earth great music, great art, and great literature. So we can see here again in history on cave paintings, in the Hopi legends, and in many other various accounts in history that these ant people actually existed. More recently, the US military mission to the underground civilization in Florida, where a number of military personnel from the secret space program again went to this underground cave and met with the ant people there. Now, they were protecting an ancient tree of life. The ancient tree of life was emitting rejuvenated water. So it actually had its roots in the water. It would take it up through its trunk, and then it would have tubular little bells, which after going through that cleansing process in the tree of life, would then release the water back down again. They also give the account of many other different types of trees which existed in this underground cave. Again, that account is on Dr. Sailer's website on Exopolitics today. It's well worth watching. It was some time ago that that mission actually occurred. Now, these ant people at this time also protecting a giant in stasis said to be Ningishzida, which is a Sumerian god of the good tree. Dr. Anthony Anfalov and Sustanek, another USSR UFO investigator, has revealed details of crashed UFOs, showing that these came from underground civilizations, including the praying mantis and the ant people. So again, different accounts in today's civilizations where we can see these ancient civilizations, the second civilization of the ant people showing up and still being prevalent, still existing in our underground worlds. Now, they weren't all good. Different factions happened around the earth of the ant people. And it's said that great wars occurred during this period, leading to one of the first resets on Earth. Although there was great cataclysms on the Earth at that time, portions of the ant people survived. So the Council of the Star Elders, or the Cedars, as a result of these wars, sent watchers to guard the evolutionary process of Earth. They started visiting Earth, and then after a period of time started to build permanent intergalactic outposts on every continent. developing the spiritual relations and soul evolution of the beings that were on the planet at that time. Of course, this is happening over millions of years, eons and eons of time. So we're just trying to condense everything into a very short period here so that we can actually have a look at how this unfolded. But just remember, this is an evolutionary process over millions of years. So again, biodiversity developed naturally, and the life-giving home planet of Earth replenished into a rich genetic diversity once again. At that point in time, more genetically evolved species appeared with stronger individual consciousness, sensibility, and basic instincts. Interactions diversified in forms not only between the species themselves, but also within individuals. Not only with individuals within species, but they extended out to crossbreeding, if you like. So as the Earth matured and stabilized, there was further soul evolution experiments began by inviting highly evolved souls from star systems to incarnate on Earth in order to accelerate the process of consciousness development. So we became, this planet, a favorite destination for the star elders and other planetary beings. They proposed that the creation of a new interspecies hybrid was done to keep a permanent watch on Earth. So we've gone through a destruction phase. We are now going through the whole rebuilding of Earth, the replenishing of Earth, the introduction again of different species, the biodiversity development, etc., etc. We're now at that point after millions of years of progress that we're ready to introduce another species. So in come the reptilians. So these are known as the lizard people or the snake people. Now, these souls were selected as the best candidates to incarnate. Were the ones coming from older worlds that had survived previous mass extinction. So what it meant was that they were very ancient souls that had much experience in evolution. They were carrying the karmic burdens, and this was also an opportunity for them to heal through this process. So there was many souls that incarnated into Earth over eons of time again. Dinosaurs during this period were heavily populating the Earth. Reptilian race called the Naga also arrived from a different galaxy called the Alpha Draconis galaxy. Now, this Naga species is different to the Alpha Draconis or the Seeker Empire that most of us would have heard of. But they do play an important role as we move down that history track to when the Anunnaki and when those different civilizations came to Earth and what unfolded from that. So around 200 million years BC, the reptiloids came here. The Naga reptiloids came here. They are from Alpha Draconis, as I said, but are not the Seekers that we have been mostly aware of. So Earth was still a young world, still establishing tectonic plates with a hot, dry climate and was mostly desert. So at that point, still recovering. This was during the period that was after the last reset. They started a terraforming program to modify the atmosphere to suit them, which formed lush tropical vegetation in temperate zones. And as we said before, dinosaurs had already developed at this stage. Now, when we talk about terraforming, advanced civilizations have a lot more knowledge in not only technology, but also things on spiritual matters, all different levels of frequencies, vibrations, color, sound, the use of geometric patterns, mathematics, physics, etc. So combining all of that knowledge together and with the experiences that they have had on other civilizations, they know actually how to change atmospheres. They know how to do what is called terraform a planet, so that it actually suits the environment that they require to survive. Now, during this time, this picture that you see on the side there is Pangea, which is what Earth looked like before the continents split. And it was during this age that this one continent, well, mostly one continent, split into parts. The role of the Naga colonists will play an important part in much more recent history. Now, during this period, when they were terraforming this planet, it actually was a lush tropical paradise, if you like. That didn't suit the reptiloids' ability to stay on the surface. They need a much more environment that we are heading towards at this very point in time to exist on the surface of the earth. So they were actually knocking down a lot of the forests. They were shaping the surface of the earth to have zero carbon. The relativity of what they did in those days to what is actually happening in these days is so parallel, it cannot be missed. That reptiloid species in 200 million years BC, trying to terraform the planet so that there was zero carbon. And if we look at the push today to get to that zero carbon point, then we have to ask the question of where is that coming from? So the star elders or the seeders at this point could see what was happening and caused a cataclysmic event, which literally destroyed most of the reptilian species at the time, apart from those that went underground. That was to make way for a new world, which would allow infinite possibilities to come forth. So a lot of them were destroyed, yes. The dinosaurs left the planet at this point, and underground caverns obviously were a refuge for these people. So an intergalactic group of 24 civilizations known as the Seeders or the Founders or the Patal preserved all of the DNA samples of all of life's flora and fauna prior to moving these reptilians from the planet, including the Naga. So we actually have a data bank of all flora and fauna species that has existed on this earth from its inception. Now that's quite an incredible thing to even wrap our heads around. We have no idea of the species that existed as flora and fauna on this planet Earth in that time. We probably can't even imagine. And I think as some of these things start to get reinstated, which they will, it will become quite a surprise, and in a lot of ways a beautiful surprise for all of us. Now, there has been a Scientific American study which recently published an article explaining how the event that wiped out the dinosaurs was a blessing for Earth, because it allowed the biodiversity to rejuvenate and rebirth, just as one example, the Amazon rainforest, plus many more over the planet. So this directly relates to the event that removed the reptilian species that was inhabiting the Earth at the time. They had terraformed the atmosphere to suit their conditions. However, Earth is an amazing sentient being that will grow back its original conditions, will grow back and flourish even more, regardless of the amount of destruction that it goes through. Now, the Lacerda files, there is something called the Lacerda files, where a researcher named Ole, a Swedish researcher, claims to have interviewed a female reptilian in 1999. So this reptilian had said that humans are the genetic property of the Elohim or ET visitors. Now, the Elohim, which we will get to, references in the Bible and so forth, probably in the next session, you will see what they mean by Elohim, which is plural for gods, which is depicted, the story is depicted in many ancient texts in the Bible, in a lot of information that is coming out almost on a daily basis at the moment. This species had developed a cigar-shaped craft that has been sighted repeatedly around the world. Some of them are highly developed spiritual beings who are helping Earth and humanity at this time. Others of this species have succumbed to the affiliations with more recent reptilians, being the sea cards. So it really makes a good point here, just to know that we hear a lot of negative speak about the reptilians and what they have done. There's a lot of information out there talking about the process that has happened in more recent times and what has come to light. It's really important to keep in our minds that not all of these species are malevolent. There are a lot of benevolent species on our planet that are helping humanity through these times in whatever way they can. They may not be visible to us at this point in time, but they are there. They don't actually need to be a physical apparition, if you like, in front of us to pass knowledge on. There are many ways and many channels to be able to do that. Now we see in Asian culture, the Nagas are depicted as a divine race of half humans, half serpent beings that reside in the netherworld, can occasionally take on part human or full human form. There's rituals devoted to these supernatural beings, which have been taking place over the last 2,000 years in South Asia. These types of beings are depicted in Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and within the Vedics of India. In fact, in a lot more ancient cultural texts as well. After the reptilians were here again, over millions of years, there was another war. The surface of the earth was darkened by clouds of dust and debris. In fact, the impact of this war had such a galactic impact that it affected planets within our solar system, not just on Earth. Many of the star elders at that time suffered great damage and forced into retreating into subterranean quarters. So they took with them again many of the forms of life and DNA codes on Earth, keeping them safe, ready for use, ready for re-implementation. Due to the destruction of this great war, the next phase of the spiritual evolution on Earth needed to have a being which aimed towards a great empathy and compassion of the soul. So we've seen these previous civilizations get completely out of hand, causing destruction either with each other or with the species that existed. So here began the introduction of a new hybrid called the bird people, or the avians, which carry the DNA of civilizations from Syria, Arcturus, and other star systems around. Now, the historical evidence that we can see from this, Chinese legends describe a race of flying people or bird men who were wisdom keepers, and they provided instructions for flying machines and attaining immortality. There's Dreamtime stories from our own originals that depict many birds taking human form. We have the ancient Egyptians, Ibis Thoth, who is known as the god of wisdom. Egyptian mythology, which is similar to the Greek god of Hermes. So all of these have played an important role through history in providing advice and wisdom. Now, the bird people didn't stay benevolent as we would hope. And of course, as history unfolds, a lot of the bird people succumbed to the dark forces, if you like, and went to the dark side. As is able to do with any civilization, corruption, infiltration, no matter how advanced, can still worm its way in. Actually, that's not quite right. Very advanced civilizations, that's a very difficult thing to do. They are very well aware of the processes that are used by not so advanced civilizations. Some of the bird people fell to the dark side. Now, a good book is The Return of the Bird Tribes. This is about American Indian tribes that have American Indian legends that tell the stories of the bird tribes. Ken Carey in this shares his knowledge from the Native American Indian perspective. It is said that the bird tribe's spiritual mission consisted in guiding individual souls towards a greater empathy and compassion for their peers, other species, and life forms. And over time, this new breed of Earth Watchers brought a powerful spiritual upgrade to the collective consciousness. They're known in many ancient cultures as angels. So when you see the depiction of angels and we hear about the fallen angels, some of those fallen angels could in fact be some of these beings that were a part of the bird tribes. Again, that whole process over millions of years, we're talking millions of years here for all of these progress through. So then we come to the Sasquatch, the Yeti, and the Yowie. Now, there's 3 books in Sasquatch Message to Humanity. Very good. They contain a lot of esoterical information. They tell the story of creation. They take you through a journey on all of these civilizations, the purposes of them, what happened to them, the different wars that occurred on Earth, how those wars affected not just the planet Earth, but also the planets which are in the vicinity of Earth, within our solar system, the steps that were taken to rejuvenate Earth. They go into so much detail. So if you are looking for something which is a really good read that takes you on this journey, I highly recommend the 3 books in this series, The Sasquatch Message to Humanity. Now, the Sasquatch have been sightings all over the world for thousands of years. There is a lot of ancient texts that depict the Sasquatch, or the Yowie, the Yeti, the Bigfoot, all of those words that we're familiar with. In recent times, there has been many communications from the Yowie or the Sasquatch to humans to transmit their message. Their message is that their spiritual mission has been to be protectors and caretakers of all life and of the spiritual knowledge of our star elders. So the Sasquatch are interdimensional beings. They can come into our physical existence, or they can exist in a different dimension. So what that means is that they vibrate at a higher frequency, a frequency that we can't see in this density, which is the third density planet, with our naked eye. When we start the journey and we accelerate that journey of spiritual awareness, spiritual integration, we then start to vibrate at a higher frequency. When we start to do that, we are able to see a lot more that we can't see with our physical eyes at this point in time. Now, the Sasquatch, Yeti, Yowie have been guiding humanity. They say that they are the big brothers of humanity. They were created long, long before any humans were. They communicate peacefully in spirit with us. There is a lot of Sasquatch movements around the earth at this time, which is gatherings for teachings, to learn spiritual and esoteric knowledge, to exchange information, to bring light in places of darkness. They play an extremely important role in the development of humans and the evolutionary, the spiritual, the esoteric development of humans. We've talked a lot about the Cedars, the Elders, the 24 civilizations, etc. So let's have a look at who these are. Elena Danaan has written a brilliant book called The Cedars, Return of the Gods. I highly recommend this book for anybody that hasn't read that. So who are these people exactly? They're a group of intergalactic cultures from many galaxies, which include a subgroup of 24 who see and propagate life in the universe. Their focus is on engineering life by process of hybridization. So hybridization of DNA. They work in accordance with source and the natural cosmic laws of evolution. So always working for the highest good. They use existing material to create hybrid races and populate worlds. The Batal, or the Cedars, seeded humanity. They actually have bases on Earth, primarily within the Himalayan mountains, which is close to the border of India and China, and one is also located in the Atlantic Ocean. So our story, approximately 65 million years ago, the Cedars began modifying an original molecules present in the day of some indigenous species on Earth. They would not have reached the level of development to become the humans of today without intervention. Now, scientists have discovered a 2% difference between primates and humans. Now, this is the intervention. This is the missing link. This is why primates, as we know them, will never evolve into humans, because they have not been involved in the genetic modification of DNA. The specific links between carbon atoms in the DNA's molecules of these primates were modified in specific ones, boosting their genome by injecting a range of different extraterrestrial DNA molecules. So there was 11 genetic inputs, 11 genetic modifications progressively done through an extended period of time, allowing development of humans according to the natural laws of evolution. So later through the ages, humans received a further 10 genetics from visitors of diverse origins, making a total of 22 interstellar species, making up the Earth human genome. Now, there have been scientists who have found civilizations on Earth who hold the 22 genomes of DNA. Now, these had to come from somewhere. They didn't just appear. And if they did, why some and not others? Why do we have people who look different? Why do we have Chinese civilization who looks different to the Indian civilization, who looks different to the original civilization, to the white civilization, to the Nordic civilization. Where did that all come from? So never before has any species received the level of DNA input that we here on Earth have. Nowhere else in our galaxy, in our universe. And that kind of makes us pretty special. The etheric sphere of the Earth during this whole period of the DNA upgrade was also upgrade, allowing future humans to begin their soul journey through the natural cycle of evolution, of incarnations, through the time period of the 12 original DNA upgrades. So we're talking hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years, actually, millions of years. So the Earth too has a consciousness and a soul. So the upgrade of the etheric body of the Earth, so it's an invisible layer around the Earth. It's a higher density, it's a higher vibrating frequency that the Earth has, that we all have. So this upgrade put into place all of its layers of densities from its core to its outer limits. The planetary matrix, once completed, was ready for the development of consciousness. So around 20 million years ago, as part of this great experiment, the Batal returned to check on the evolution of the planet and the new life forms that they had created. The ecosystem at that point in time was enriched with new plant life, creating satisfactory environment to improve the conditions for the early proven humanoid life forms to develop. Earth's ley lines were established, all important to make up the etheric space of the Earth, and more nodes were anchored into the geometric field of the planet, expanded to a higher magnitude. The experiment was proceeding as exactly as they had planned. So I just want to take a little minute here to explain that everything we see is not physical. We know that there is many different layers of energy. Just to give you an example, and it's one of the ways I like to sort of explain it, is that if we have a look at electricity, we've all got a power pole outside of our house here, and it runs a wire into our house. We flick a switch and it turns on, but we don't see what actually turns it on. It's energy that turns it on. It's exactly the same thing. Different voltages of energy are required to run different pieces of equipment, if you like. If you translate that into a living sentient being, then you've got different layers of energy. Each one of us, each planet, each being, in fact, everything within us, within Earth, within our solar system, within the universe, within creation. So there is different vibratory levels of energy. Think of it like layers, all vibrating, each layer vibrating at its own frequency, getting on higher and higher, or equally lower and lower, because there has to be balance. So we've gone through millions of years of evolutionary process as beings now, and 437,000 years before Christ, again, the Batal returned to check on the evolutionary process of the planet and the species on here. So the environment at that time had blossomed into balance and perfection. The humans were developing in alignment with the natural law of evolution. It was slow, but it was a multi-hybrid of DNA superspecies that had been created. So they monitored every step in the biological, social, and conscious development without intervening, but making sure that the experiment would continue as long and as safely as possible. A cosmic law is non-intervention, allowing the natural development of consciousness through cycles of growth in a planetary matrix, or, if you like, on a planet. So it's really important to note here, for those of you who have read a lot, for example, about the return of the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is the DNA, the activate, or the 12 strands of DNA, if you like, or the 22 strands of DNA, and how there is, or could very well be, the availability to have that reactivated within us or re-implanted within us via technology. So it's really important to note here, should that happen, just as these humans in those early days had incredible DNA in them, it doesn't mean that you are going to suddenly become this enlightened, awakened, sentient being overnight or instantly. You have to go through an evolutionary process. You have to go through a process of learning, of integration, of knowing who you are, of understanding your levels, of the levels of consciousness, of knowing the integration of those levels of consciousness, knowing who you are, developing along with that But what it does mean is that you far exceed on your journey anything that you can possibly imagine, anything. So around about 320,000 BC, the genetic scientists withdrew from Earth. However, they maintained observation points and outposts in our solar system and on secret bases on Earth in the Himalayas and the Atlantic Ocean, as we said before. So they continue to monitor their genetic experiments right to the point of when a heavily armed fleet of visitors arrived. And at this point, we have income of the Anunnaki. Okay, so as much as possible, and as trying to keep this as simplistic as possible, it covers a lot of information here. And it also can become quite a shock to all of us to come to the realization that perhaps we are an experiment, a beautiful genetic experiment meant for the creation of an incredible human that will have the ability to do things that, as I said, we can't even begin to imagine. So if we have a look at this from a different perspective, because that in and of itself can be a little difficult to digest, particularly with the ingrained programming that we have had over thousands of years, which in essence, the reason for that programming was actually to disconnect us from source, to create a severance of the ability to access knowledge, ancient knowledge, not just ancient knowledge, but creator knowledge. So that disconnection has meant that for even in this lifetime, for many years, but thousands of lifetimes, we haven't taken the responsibility to try and reestablish that reconnection. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about how that happened. As these species have been developed on Earth, they were created from fractals of source. And as fractals of source had the ability to come in and out of a physical body at will. Now that at times became quite difficult to operate in a physical form. So the creation of the ego was then done, or the ego, the inner child, or the subconscious. Now, again, over many, many thousands of years, the ego, the inner child, started to get a little bit too big for its boots, you might say. Started to think that it didn't actually need that connection to source. Started to think that its creation abilities far outweighed anything that it could have by establishing, keeping that connection going. In the beginning, when that subconscious was created, there was direct line, direct communication between all levels of consciousness within us. But as that severance started to take shape, they lost that connection. Now, when you think of a child, it's often referred to as an inner child. And you think of a child, or you see how children act, you can see the tantrums that they have. You can see the joy that they bring. So this subconscious part of us is what controls our emotions. It's what controls the physicalness of our body. It's the energy that keeps us ticking over, our heart beating, our blood running through our body. It does all the things that we need it to do to exist on this planet and exist in a way that we don't have to think about it. And it does a brilliant job, except it got a little shiny for itself. Now, this process of, with a lot of help along the way, as we move through this journey, we will see the manipulation of that child part of us and how easily it is to divert its attention into things that are not necessarily for the benefit of ourselves or humanity or for the greater good of the solar system, universe, multi-universe. So it is fairly safe to say at this point in time, 97% of humanity is working at a subconscious level 97% of the time. Maybe a little less now, actually. That was probably the case maybe 5-6 years ago. Throughout this journey of awakening, as we have all gone through over this period of time, then a lot more people are re-establishing that connection to source. They are starting to go within to figure out what happened, to actually take that responsibility and to work with that in a child. The last thing that we want to do is cause separation the other way. We need all levels of consciousness to be integrated in us to be able to move forward effectively, consciously, and to build that better world that we actually want to see. So the severance of the subconscious, if you like, from the part that controls the physical, from that source of creation, made the manipulation of humans so much easier. And it's no wonder why. It's easier to manipulate a child than it is when we are consciously thinking. So it's easier to redirect our attention so that we are not actually focusing on what is happening and what has been unfolding over, again, thousands of years. It's actually what has brought us to this point today. It's really important that we remember this going forward because it highlights the role that we have played in the unfolding of this whole program. Yes, there has been manipulation. Yes, there has been control, very smart control from people who have access to knowledge and have had access to knowledge that we haven't, or that we haven't bothered to look for. Yes, there has been all of that, but ultimately, we created that situation for us to be able to be manipulated in the first place. So when we talk about responsibility, taking responsibility for ourselves, it really is about reestablishing that connection of the subconscious, the integration of the conscious self, and the integration of the higher self, or creator source, opening that channel flow within all of us. So as I said, this information can be quite difficult to process. Assimilating that we have always been an experiment of galactic visitors has been outside of the realms of possibility of what we've been taught. When this first presentation is complete, of which we are nearly done, let it bounce around in your mind. Sit with yourself. Take note of how this makes you feel. Go back to that point in your gut of when you first heard something. Tune into the reaction, tune into the gut reaction that you have with that. See if it resonates with you. If it doesn't, that's okay. It's a challenging time. Assimilating this information, integrating this information. It's a really, really important foundation moving forward, though, as we take this journey through history of humanity's history, moving forward from here on in. So know that we are not alone. We never have been. There are many, many different civilizations, many on Earth, who are helping to progress us forward to a point where we come into our own. We come into the beautiful beings that we were always meant to be. Thanks. I
Wow.
think that.
Holy moly. I'm speechless, Kim. That was absolutely, that's one of the most amazing things I've ever heard. And I really want to thank you for sharing that in such an eloquent and moving way.
Thanks,
was,
Aidan.
hey, I just want to say a couple of things. That's interesting. You talked about the evolution 65 billion years ago. It started the upgrade. Wasn't that the time when they said the dinosaurs were attacked and destroyed with a planetary same time? Because I just looked it up on Google. It said 65 million years ago.
Yeah, so the Earth went through another reset, basically. And once that reset was complete, then the dinosaurs had gone. Yes. So the evolutionary upgrade at that point in time. So you're talking about the very initial stages of upgrade to DNA.
And that was probably the cabal trying to cover up what was happening in reality by explaining that was a dinosaur destruction. Is that probably about it?
Well, no, actually, it was the according to the accounts, it seems that it was the Cedars civilizations, the 24 galactic civilizations, that actually disrupted the planet at that time because of the terraforming that was happening, because of the changing of atmosphere. Earth itself and all of the species on it was not able to develop because, again, they were trying to reduce the carbon content in the air, right? Similar to what is happening today. So without the removal of those species, of those reptiloid species, including those dinosaur species, then we wouldn't be here. We could not exist if the evolution of the planet wasn't readjusted so that we have the balance of all the molecules, the oxygen, the carbon, everything that we need to exist on this planet.
These seeders or whoever they are, they really had our best interest at heart, or they just wanted the experiment to succeed.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that has been talked about is that Earth and the human civilization was also always developed to be like an intergalactic library. When we actually went through our development and came into who we were, they say that it was always intended to be a place where other civilizations could actually come and learn, almost like a galactic school. So the progress of us, the manipulation of us, obviously, of the DNA following on from this has obviously put a big break in the works and everything of our evolution. The other thing that has been mentioned is that humans as a species were created to end the wars and the galactic wars that have been taking place for millions of years, because we would have the evolutionary process, we would have the knowledge, we would have the understanding when we got to that point to know what to do, to know how to interact with all of the different species and actually bring peace in the universe. That's another line of thinking that is actually out there. Either way, it does the same thing.
So you're saying their goal was for us to develop to such an extent that they wanted us to be able to bring peace to the universe?
Yeah.
Well, we have some great responsibility there. I know there's a hand going up. I just need to. Who's the Hopi?
It's a Native American Indian tribe, the Hopi tribe. You can Google them. They're on Google. Oh, on.
And one last question before somebody. I know that hands coming up, and appreciate. Sasquatch, Yeti, tall. Is that the beings, the giants that were around? That's why they build big doors and big buildings and that type of thing. Do you think that's sort of fitted?
No. So that's a different. We will actually cover those giants in a number of places, but no, not the Sasquatch are the hairy men, or the Bigfoot. You know, the stories of the Yetis and the Bigfoot.
Yeah, they can never find any of them in the movies.
No, but they have been found. There have been found. Yes, definitely. I should have actually, put a picture on the slideshow so that everybody could see.
I appreciate that. All right. Thank you so much. I will start asking questions. Chris, how are you? Had your first hand up first. Could you please ask your question?
Yeah, so if we want to stop all the wars, we just need to get rid of the cabal first, and then that might be a possibility. The other thing is, if they're trying to get rid of the carbon like they were many centuries ago, are we the modern day equivalent of the dinosaurs?
No, we are far from it. We're far from it.
It's probably also ironic that a lot of the deep state are trying to go underground as well now.
Yes, well, there's a lot of interbreeding with some reptilian species, is my understanding. In fact, I actually know that. I know that the reptilian species do exist. How? Because I have actually seen one. And it was an experience that I had when I was 22, actually 23. I was walking down the street and a man was walking towards me and his actual face just fell away, and I saw this face of what I now know to be a reptilian species. I had no idea at the time. Of course, as I'm walking along, I'm like, excuse my French, but I was just like, holy shit, what the hell was that? I had no idea. And no drugs, no alcohol, no external substances, nothing like that. Completely clear-headed. I didn't dabble in anything like that. I am able to see things on different levels, different energy levels. It was in probably 2018 that I came across a picture of a reptilian, and actually a shapeshifted being, a human that was shapeshifting into a reptilian. Very similar, lot of similarities there. So So yes, they do exist. Are we like dinosaurs? Far, far from it. No. The reason that they are lowering the carbon content in our air is the higher the oxygen level that we have on Earth, the more it aids our spiritual development. Oxygen is an amazing compound which we all need to survive, as is carbon. We need carbon to survive as well. But the lowering of the oxygen levels, and just on that point, sorry, sorry, I was just talking about two different things there. Obviously, lowering of the oxygen levels is to again decrease our learning capabilities. We are a carbon species, so we need carbon to survive. So again, the lowering of the carbon at this point is to again reduce the compatibility of humans and existence on this planet.
Can I add to that, Kim, that
yes,
a higher, actually they've demonstrated quite extensively that oxygen is a healer of cancer and hydrogen and all these things. So if you lower the oxygen, it aids their goal to make us sicker and eliminate us, which is again the dinosaur concept. But there you go.
Yeah.
Rob.
Yeah, Kim, few things actually. First, just the last thing you just mentioned with regard to reptilians. I can actually back up what you say. I have seen reptilians, and I have a very good friend who has also seen them on a number of occasions. So I have no doubt that what you're saying there is absolutely correct. And they're not there for the best of our interests in a lot of cases. And those are the ones that we've been working with. But what I was also wanting to talk to you about, the Akashic Library, is this where we're looking? Is that the area where a lot of others are going to as well? This is the place of learning for not only our civilization, but past civilizations. Because I know when I've accessed the Akashic Library, it was not in this lifetime.
So there's yes and no. If you know how, you can access your Akashic records. So the Akashic records, and there's many different levels of them, you each have your own personal Akashic record, obviously. You could access at any time if you know how, and through training. Yep. There is also planetary, galactic, universal, multi-universal creation Akashic records as well. Now they exist on a different dimension, on vibrating at a different frequency. There is also a lot of halls of records, they are called, which are situated around Earth and in our solar system. Many different locations around Earth hold these halls of records. And a lot of these places, they come in different forms. Some of them are small metallic boxes, which project a holographic image and will give you a view of a snippet in time of Earth's history or galactic history or whatever that looks like. So there are also different devices, such as the ones in the Bajechi Mountains, which were discovered in 1999, which have physical devices implanted into the ground. Apparently they appear, because they are so big, were created by the period of time when the giants were on Earth. That's actually a stationary technology, which is you stand at and it will show you Earth's history according to your evolutionary process. Now, that's something else to actually mention here. When you access your Akashic records, or even if you access the planetary or greater Akashic records, you will only ever see to the point of the level of consciousness that you are.
Yeah, that makes sense. From what I've accessed, it does relate to my history, I suppose, or my evolution. It doesn't seem to go outside of that.
As you become more awakened, then yes, you access more and more and more. And that whole idea is that we actually open up that channel so that it becomes an easy process for us to do. In this level of consciousness that we are, there are many things that we have done or been a part of, or many things that have happened over our history, individually and collectively, that we may not be able to handle seeing right now. Yeah. So we and if you can't, you won't be shown. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Rob. Brownie, you've got your hand up. You need to unmute.
Hands up, and it was on the same line as Rob's questioning regarding Akashic records and our ability to access those. Now, I was getting really excited in your presentation because that slide at the end was the Anunnaki, and I'm going, oh, good, she go there next. So obviously that's for the next time. But in this timeline as we know it, when do you think us as humans in a current form, in fact, you know, myself as a reincarnated being, how long ago was it that we first become in this current form?
So the Anunnaki arrived in this planet 437,000 years ago. So over a period of time, that started to unfold. So I think it's around 300,000 to 200,000 BC from memory. Don't quote me on that, though. I would need to just double check that. But again, the evolutionary process continued on for a period of time whilst the Anunnaki were here, because they were using their own beings to do as they wanted for mining, which is primarily why they came to Earth in the first place, was to mine, particularly gold. Gold would have heard them being called the shining people. So monatomic gold in its purest form is what they use to prolong life, and that also gives them the shining skin. So they had some wars upset within their own people, because their own people didn't actually want to do that mining anymore. And then that's when the manipulation started. So it was quite a period of time before the Anunnaki actually started to interfere with our DNA. And we will definitely cover that in the next one.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tonight's been quite a head spinner, and we're not even anywhere near up to Christ yet. So it'll be a long journey. So you're breaking this up into how many parts do you think all up?
Well, I'm not actually sure just yet, but I really just I thought this part here was really important, just to get the foundation, so that one of the things that we've got to stop doing is, and it can tend to actually happen when we start to investigate what happened with the Anunnaki, is we can project that blame onto an external source to say, oh, well, our DNA was interfered with, so how, what chance did we ever have? But what we really need to do is take that back a step and go, well, actually, we started to sever that connection with the creative source ourselves first. That allowed the manipulation and the corralling of us into different situations to happen. Now, admittedly, in those days, we weren't at that evolutionary level to know what to do with it, but we had already gone through a process where not everybody had severed that connection, and not everybody had done it in full. It was, again, over a long period of time. But I just thought that the interaction of the different species is a good grounding to start from, but also the process of what we actually went through to get to the true history, to the history where it actually involves us, if you like.
Yeah. Mm. And another thing too, I'd like to ask is, you talk about wars in those old days. What form did those wars take? I mean, is it more of, I don't know, I've got no idea. I mean, I'm assuming it's not ray guns and sort of ships, and I don't know. I mean, how do they have their wars?
So you have to remember that these beings came from technologically advanced or advanced civilizations in the first place. They were never meant to go to war. So they also had help from other extraterrestrials. So the wars that they had were quite horrific. They, in one of the wars, which was actually between the ant people, I think, and the reptilian people, the reptiloids that were here at the time, was that powerful with such advanced technological weapons that it destroyed the moon.
Our moon's been out now.
Our moon.
Okay, so obviously the first moon. Okay, so this, I'm sure at some stage you're going to tell us what this current moon is made of.
I will. Yes, I will.
There's actually a movie out right now that talks about the new moon.
And it's funny, so many movies depict, I mean, look at this. You've got the ant people that have come out. You've got so many movies about reptilians. You've got so many mermaid movies. All of the soft disclosure that goes on with movies is just incredible. Just incredible.
Yeah,
the Yowie or the Sasquatch depicted in the Star Wars movie, right?
Yes.
as Wookiee.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I think it's part of the they need to explain to us that this is what's really going on, so they can't deny that they didn't tell us, and we weren't aware.
that's right.
Wow.
Exactly.
Thanks for that.
Okay.
Thank you. I was going to ask you something. I forgot what it was. Kathy, could you please ask your question?
Whoa. Can I possibly speak to you sometime, Kim? I'm really grateful for all the work you've done on this. You're actually a whole lot of experiences since I was a very little child. You're bringing plus a lot of missions that I go on with my elder. I won't go into it all, but it started off with it. My husband and I have been convinced that we're being part of an experiment, or most of our lives. As a child, I could experience I had at 5, it was the oneness, and went out. I feel as though I went out of timelines in that space. So since then, it's like, you know, speaking to people on the other side, so-called, and this, that, and the other thing. I've had lots of experience, but they've come to check on me, where I've woken up through for years and just downloading in this blue, beautiful scalar blue space with just all these algorithms in this beautiful white writing. It's just downloading. No conscious knowing, but then being able to do a lot more than I used to be able to. And now I see them come and check on me at night. It'll wake me up often, and I can see that I can feel that they're checking, and it's easy to talk. Just that, like even this last 3 weeks, I've been put on R&R because I won't fucking stop. Excuse me. Unless I'm given orders sometimes. So yeah, it's a really great space, so that I've had to minimize the missions I go on and things like that. I would love to. Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. No problems. So I've sent you that number, Kathy. So you should have that in there in the chat here.
Oh, darling, thank you so much. I can't tell you. I've been going, come on, tell me more. I've got to get some more straight context. I'm happy to fly about in all of that, but yeah, thank you. So it just says direct message there.
Yeah.
Not sure where to access that on here.
If you just open up your chat there, it should be in the chat. Only you can see
there,
that.
I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you, darling. Thank you, everybody, for your patience and kindness.
You're welcome.
Oh, thank you.
So I'll just quickly say, whenever you are learning, and this goes with any kind of learning whatsoever, it doesn't matter whether it's spiritual knowledge, you're learning something at university, at school, in life, or whatever, you have to have a period of integration with it. It actually creates a physical reaction, a physical chemical in your brain. You have the capacity these days to hold a lot more information and to learn a lot quicker, integrate a lot quicker, due to the rays and frequency of the planet Earth. However, just be sure that you give yourself that period of integration, because if you overload your brain and your body with that particular chemical, then it can actually cause harm. So if you walk away from here going, oh my God, my head hurts, I just don't know, what am I going to do with this or whatever, allow yourself that time to actually integrate knowledge and do your research. Walk away from it, go and watch a movie, or one of those movies that depicts these, or go and stand in the grass, which is the best thing. Earth yourself. Allow some of that energy to flow through and out of you that might create that confusion.
Actually, even better than standing on the earth, which is as good as it is if you can, go and have a walk in the ocean barefoot. That's the highest level of grounding you can ever get. There's nothing better than that. Kim, I've got to say to you, seriously, the maximum you had was 78 participants, and up until a couple of minutes ago, you still had 78 participants. We just lost 3 in the last couple of minutes. I don't know why. It's been going for an hour and a half. Everybody is riveted. And I can tell you, you are such a powerful speaker. You communicate at such a high level. I can assure you that everybody on this call would love to say thank you so much for sharing that, because we're all heavily moved right now. And I suppose the next question we've all got is, how many more do we have to experience with you? What's your number one? I know this is not number one, but what do you feel is the program for how many more do we need to go through?
Really, I think we could probably cover it off in maybe 5, if I say 5.
Oh my goodness, now you've blown our head away.
We can do more if you want.
Just
Okay.
make it
Yes.
make it a date
Yes.
every fortnight. So
Sorry, you're brilliant. This is your calling, Kim, sharing knowledge with us, and we're all very, very keen. None of us in this room is not uninterested in anything you have to say. We're going, give it to me, what more, what more, what more.
That's
Right,
so lovely,
Mandy?
Aidan. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to work out how to put my hand up.
go, Lisa. Go, Lisa.
I was just wanting to ask Kim. Now, you mentioned it that we were donated, or I don't know if the definition is donated, but 22 strands of DNA. My question is regarding to the COVID-19 vaccinations. I understand that it damages the DNA. So how is that going to determine our future? What cause is that going to bring if our DNA is damaged?
Okay.
Oh, those that took the experimental jab.
The med beds are coming, they'll heal it all.
So as a part of this, Enki Ea, he is known as the father of humanity, considers humanity his children. When he returned to our solar system, brought the original template for the DNA. Now, there are from numerous different sources that those, as you said, Barbara, medbeds are currently being created on the moon at this point. And that DNA template, the original DNA template, will be in those medbeds. And should you wish to, you can have that reinstated into you. For those that are injured with DNA manipulation, etc., that will be available. Now, I don't know, obviously I haven't been to the moon to see this myself, but there are quite a lot of different sources that are talking the same talk, including the secret space program, military in America, the good guys.
That was my concern, was that if we are, say, an experiment, and then humanity has gone and done this, someone's not going to be happy. So
what a beautiful experiment that we are. And there's been a lot of external influences that have done this, not just from the reptilians. It runs a lot deeper than that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Kim. Thanks for explaining that.
You're welcome.
The only last thing I have to ask then is, as part of our awakening process, do you have any suggestions on that to help us? There's no one in this room that's not awake enough that any of that scared us today. I know a lot of people that would scare, but they talk about us moving from a 3D, 4D to 5D consciousness. Do you have any comments on that?
Yes. So there is a lot of there is a lot of things that you can do for that, and that's almost another session in itself. Now, Aidan, you would have heard me talk about 3 Omni and the course that Grant is running with that, and that is all about reconnection to that higher awareness, coming out of that subconscious programming and integrating the conscious self and the higher awareness, so that all 3 are working together, allowing you to recognize that program when it kicks off, because it's a very, very quick thing, very quick reaction that our subconscious does when we are confronted with a situation, or even going through something internally. So
I can vouch for that personally myself. But kicked in, as you said, it's instantaneous.
It is instantaneous, and if we're not in control of that and our thoughts, if we don't even, a lot of times we don't even know it's happening, you know.
Yeah.
You take your thoughts, for example, if you had an interaction with somebody, you probably did this the other night, Aidan, your whole night is just spent and you're just running around in circles in the same place and you're just not going anywhere. You're just telling yourself the same thing, but you might just say it a bit differently the next time than you did the time before, right? So you play that same scenario on repeat over and over, whatever it might be, unconsciously. So when you actually start to work with yourself and you become conscious of every thought that goes through your head, you can actually start to direct your thoughts and away from the repeat situation, away from the reactive, oh, you called me a dog, so I'm going to bear up at you. You actually don't do that. You have the ability to mentally take that step back and go, you know, I'm so sorry that you feel that way.
So you're saying you automatically trigger a response in your system rather than a reaction.
That's the goal to get to. That takes a lot of work, obviously, and continuous work. But the tools for that, there are many, many tools there that we can cover off. We can actually do a session on that as well at some point.
Well,
we can do that.
Maybe we'll do that at the end when you've blown our minds and destroyed our history.
Yes. But for a longer extended program of self-development, then I highly recommend, it's 3omni.life. And the course isn't up and running yet, but it will be. There are 2 ebooks out now, I think, or 1 ebook that's published, and a lot of different videos in there. But the course itself is actually talking about how to recognize the programming when it kicks off consciously and integrate that with the conscious self and the higher self, so that every time, every moment of every day that you live your life, you are living it from that higher perspective, that higher awareness, and you're not allowing that inner child to go rah.
So when something bad happens to us, we don't react badly. We actually learn how to respond correctly so that we don't cause damage to ourselves.
Yeah. Yes.
I've gone through that just recently, but we won't talk about that.
Yeah. No. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so if there's no other questions from anybody, Kim, thank you so much for such an amazing insight tonight, and we so look forward to the next time when we could do a second session with you. I know all of us will bring our friends along and we'll have double the numbers. And again, thank you so much. Clap of hands from everybody. Well done. Thank you so much.
That's wonderful. And thank you all again for coming along. Just my last final words on this. You know, we're all on this journey together. I am so blessed to have so many people attend a call like this. I think that it's absolutely incredible that we are all at that point where we just want to learn. We want to take that information in. That is a blessing. That warms my heart, as it should warm all of yours, because not only are we on this journey together, but it means that we are all walking forward in our own evolutionary process, in our own spiritual development, in our own vibrational raising exponentially together. So I say thank you to all of you. I appreciate it.